What happens when a 74-year-old woman tries to take care of herself and becomes the target of mockery from her own family? They laughed at her habit until she collapsed alone on the floor. What happened next turned their lives upside down in the most unexpected way. They always say, laughter is the best medicine. But let me tell you something. Sometimes laughter is just the sound you make before the fall, before everything breaks. That's what happened to me. I laughed, I made jokes, and then I landed in the hospital. My name is Helen Monroe, 74 years old, widow, mother of 2, and the kind of woman who still believes in handwritten thank you notes and never missing Sunday lunch. I've lived through wars, recessions, and a marriage that should have been put down humanely in the late 80s. And through it all, I survived by laughing. That was my armor. You want to know what else was my armor? Apple cider vinegar. Yeah, the cheap kind in the cloudy bottle that smells like disappointment and gym socks. I took a shot every morning for 15 years, said it kept me young, regular, and sharp. Was I right? Hell if I know. But it made me feel like I had a grip on things. It was my daily act of control in a world that kept trying to push me into a corner labeled old and irrelevant. Now picture this. I'm standing in my kitchen, early morning light cutting across the counter like a damn movie scene. My robe tied at the waist, mug of warm water in one hand, vinegar bottle in the other, a squeeze of lemon, a deep breath, down the hatch, my ritual, my time. Then I grabbed the banana bread I baked the night before, extra walnuts, just how Cheryl liked it, and headed out. She lives 6 blocks down. I could have driven, but walking clears my head. Also, my old Buick smells like old man cologne and regret. When I got there, Cheryl opened the door half-dressed, Bluetooth in one ear, her other hand balancing a screaming toddler on her hip. She looked at me like I was Jehovah's Witness selling guilt. "Mom, what are you doing here? You didn't text." I held up the bread. "Just wanted to bring you something. You've been working so hard. I thought maybe—" She cut me off. "I'm really busy. You should have called." I walked into her kitchen anyway, set the bread on the counter. Her husband, Frank, was on the couch with his feet up like a tax-paying statue. Didn't even look up. "You know," Cheryl said, "that vinegar stuff you drink is probably what's making you tired all the time. It's acidic. You're not 20, Mom." I blinked. "Thanks for the diagnosis, doctor." Google, "I'm serious. You should stop with the witch potions and maybe just rest more. Rest more." As if that's all aging is, sitting quietly and waiting to expire. I wanted to scream, but instead, I smiled. "I'll consider it." I walked home slower than usual. Not because I was tired, but because I didn't want to cry in front of anyone. You know that feeling? When your chest is full of unspoken words and your face is trying to hold steady? That night, I skipped the vinegar. I sat in my chair, my knees wrapped in an old heating pad, and told myself Cheryl meant well. She didn't. But lying to yourself is another kind of habit. The next morning, I felt off. Not sick, just wrong. Like when you misplace something important, but can't figure out what it is. I made tea instead of vinegar water, sat by the window, listened to the neighborhood wake up without me. And then the pain started. First a pinch, then a twist, then a full-on gut rebellion that left me hunched over like a broken question mark. I tried to walk it off, tried to breathe through it. But by 3:47 p.m., I was on the hallway floor, whispering to God or the cat, whoever would listen. The cat won. He sat by my head like a smug little sphinx, while I pressed the emergency button on my necklace and waited. You ever lie on the ground and realize how cold your floors are? Not metaphorically, literally, cold, impersonal, like the people who walked on them. The ambulance came. The EMT was young and smelled like gum and hand sanitizer. I joked that this wasn't how I planned to meet handsome men. He didn't laugh, took my blood pressure like I was a defective machine. At the hospital, everything was bright and loud and indifferent. Machines beeped. Nurses floated. Doctors explained things to each other over my head like I was a forgotten suitcase. They ran tests, hooked me to fluids, drew blood like it was a hobby. And the whole time, I kept thinking, all this because I skipped a habit? Or was it everything else I'd been swallowing for years? They say aging is graceful, but sometimes it's just slow erasure. You get quieter, smaller. People stop asking how you feel and start asking if you need help using the bathroom. It's humiliating. And when Cheryl finally showed up, 5 hours later, she walked in with a latte and a sigh. "Mom, what happened now?" Now, I almost laughed. Almost. But I didn't have the strength. I looked her dead in the eyes and said, "I stopped drinking vinegar. You happy?" She blinked like I'd said I'd joined a cult. "Wait, are you serious?" "No, Cheryl. I staged a dramatic collapse for attention. What do you think?" And there it was, the beginning of something much bigger than stomach pain. It was the beginning of my fury waking up. To be continued. What comes next? Trust me. You don't want to miss what happens when an old woman stops playing nice. Waking up in a hospital isn't like in the movies. There's no gentle beeping or warm lighting. It's cold, harsh, fluorescent. A nurse is taking your blood pressure like she's late for lunch. Your mouth tastes like dry paper towels, and there's a tube somewhere it shouldn't be. That's how I came to after collapsing in my hallway. Barefoot, humiliated, and furious. The doctor came in all smiles like he was on a game show. Dr. Klein, mid-30s, crisp hair, confident voice, and not a clue what it feels like to be invisible in your own family. "Ms. Monroe, you had a mild gastrointestinal erosion. We're going to keep you overnight for observation." Observation? Honey, if you wanted to observe me, you should have come to Cheryl's house last Sunday. 5 hours. That's how long it took Cheryl to get to the hospital. And when she walked in, latte in hand, sunglasses still on indoors, she said, "Mom, what happened now?" Now, like it's a pattern. Like I'm just some walking soap opera interrupting her yoga schedule. I said, "I stopped drinking vinegar. Isn't that what you wanted?" She squinted. "Wait, what?" "I gave up my witch potion, rested more just like you said. And, surprise, I ended up in the ER. So I hope you're proud." She muttered something about overreacting and sat down like she was doing me a favor. I looked her straight in the face and said, "You know what's funny? You're not even mad that I collapsed. You're mad that it disrupted your afternoon." Cheryl didn't respond. She just stared at her phone like it held a better mother. The nurse returned to check my vitals. I cracked, "Are they still there, or have they retired too?" She smiled. At least someone in that room had a sense of humor. When Cheryl left, after a solid 18 minutes, she kissed my forehead like I was a child with a cold, not a woman who spent her entire life keeping the people around her fed, clothed, and ungrateful. That night, I lay in the hospital bed, listening to the woman next to me cry. She was maybe a decade older. Her daughter had come in earlier and called her a burden. Out loud, in public. I wanted to stand up and give a speech. Something strong. Something fierce. But I was tired. Tired in a way that goes deeper than sleep. I realized something lying there. We raised these people. We raised them to be independent, strong, opinionated, and somehow we taught them that we're disposable. The next day, Dr. Klein came in with a clipboard and a smile that made me want to smack it off with a bedpan. "Good news," he said. "Your condition's manageable. A few changes to your diet, rest, medication review should be good to go home tomorrow." I asked, "Will that prescription fix my daughter's attitude too? Or is that a separate department?" He blinked. I'm not sure I follow." "Of course not. He's a man with a clipboard. He doesn't follow emotions, only numbers." By the time I got home, the fridge was empty. No one had restocked it. The cat looked annoyed I'd returned. I sat in my recliner, knees stiff, heart heavier than before, and thought, what now? And then something in me snapped. Quietly. Not a bang. A shift. I picked up my phone, logged into Facebook, and wrote, "Collapsed in my hallway. Hospitalized. Daughter took 5 hours to show. Still here. Still standing. And no longer quiet." I didn't post it for likes. I posted it because I was tired of feeling like a ghost in my own story. The comments came quickly. Old friends, church ladies, even an old student from my baking class in 1998. They said things like, "You're stronger than they know," and "Don't let them make you feel small." It wasn't about validation. It was about being heard. Cheryl didn't respond publicly. She sent a text. Was that necessary? I typed back, more necessary than 5 hours of silence. The next day, Paulie, my neighbor, brought over homemade soup and 3 kinds of sarcasm. We laughed, real laughs. I told him the hospital food tasted like regret in Jell-O form. He said he was going to start drinking vinegar just to spite his daughter. We talked about how getting older is like becoming furniture. You're still there, but no one notices until they bump into you. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to beg for attention anymore. No more quiet sacrifices. No more pretending Cheryl's absence was okay. No more tiptoeing around her defensiveness like it was sacred ground. I pulled out a notebook and started writing a list. Things I will no longer apologize for. Taking up space. Saying no. Wanting kindness from my own family. Apple cider vinegar. Yes, I put that one back on. Because you know what? It wasn't the vinegar. It was the loneliness, the silence, the way people stopped checking in unless I was lying on a gurney. So the next time Cheryl called, and yes, she did, I answered with a smile in my voice and steel in my spine. "Hi, sweetheart," I said. "If this is about groceries or errands, you'll have to wait. I'm busy living." And I meant it. We're halfway through, but this story's just heating up. Something happens when you finally stop waiting for someone else to change. It's not a miracle moment. It's more like a quiet snap in your spine. Like standing up straighter after decades of hunching. Not from age, but from expectations. That was me the morning after I told Cheryl I was busy living. I woke up, opened my eyes, and realized, if my daughter was ever going to see me as more than an obligation, I had to make sure the rest of the world saw me first. So I did something unthinkable. I joined a community group. Yes, me. Helen Monroe. Joined a local over 60 women's leadership circle. Sounded like a cult at first, but turned out to be a room full of women just like me. Tired of being spoken over, passed by, and patted on the head. First meeting, I walked in, and someone said, "You must be Cheryl's mom." I said, "No, I'm Helen. Cheryl's my daughter." And just like that, I took my name back. I told the group what happened, the vinegar, the collapse, the silence. I didn't sugarcoat it. And you know what? They didn't flinch. One woman said, "That's not aging. That's surviving neglect." That phrase stuck with me. Surviving neglect. For weeks, we met every Thursday. We shared stories, laughed, planned community events. I helped organize a cooking workshop, led a walk for senior health, and even stood up to speak at a local council meeting. My voice shook, but it was mine. Cheryl didn't know any of this. She didn't ask. She texted once. "Need help setting up your phone again?" I replied, "I've been speaking in front of elected officials. I think I can handle settings." Silence. And I'll admit, part of me wanted her to show up, to come to a meeting, to hear what others heard when I spoke. But she didn't. Instead, Paulie did. Sweet Paulie, with his uneven gait and endless wit. He came to one of our events and listened to me read an essay called "Things They Stop Telling You After 70. I saw tears in his eyes. Afterward, he said, "You know, Helen, you've got that kind of voice that makes people stop chewing mid-bite." It was the highest compliment I'd gotten in years. Meanwhile, Cheryl called less. I called less, too. And strangely, it didn't hurt like it used to. Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting for someone to see me. I was showing myself. And then came the letter. A real one. Not an email, not a text. A letter. From Cheryl. It came in the mail, folded neatly in a pale blue envelope with handwriting I recognized from PTA permission slips and grocery lists. She wrote, "Mom, I've been thinking about what you said, about what I didn't say. I read your Facebook post. I didn't respond because it made me feel small, and I didn't want to feel that way. But maybe I needed to. I don't know when I started treating you like a task. Maybe it was convenience. Maybe I got used to you always being there. But you're right. You're not a ghost. And I haven't made space for your voice. I'm sorry. I want to do better. I don't know how yet. But I want to try. Love, Cheryl." I read it 3 times. Not because it was beautifully written. It wasn't. But because it was the first time in years that Cheryl didn't sound like a customer service rep trying to reschedule me. I didn't call her. Not yet. Instead, I pinned the letter to my refrigerator. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder. Change isn't loud. It's slow. Earned. Sometimes it starts with falling. Sometimes with vinegar. But it always, always begins with a choice. And I had made mine. Final part coming up. The resolution you didn't expect. And the one I deserved. Don't miss the last chapter. There's a moment when the storm inside you finally quiets. Not because everything is fixed, but because you've stopped trying to fix everyone else. That was me, standing in my kitchen, holding Cheryl's letter in my hand, staring at the fridge like it owed me answers. My fingers trembled a little, not from weakness, but from the weight of something I hadn't felt in a while. Peace. For the first time in decades, I wasn't bracing for a call, or a comment, or a guilt trip visit that lasted 12 minutes and smelled like exhaustion. I was just still. And in that stillness, I decided something. I was going to live the rest of my life out loud. The next Sunday, I hosted dinner. Real dinner. Roast chicken, green beans with almonds, 2 kinds of pie. I lit candles. Not because anyone deserved the ambiance, but because I did. I deserved a room that glowed for me. I invited Paulie, of course, Gloria from the leadership group, even sweet Maria from the pharmacy who always complimented my earrings. And yes, I invited Cheryl. She came. Not on time, not with flowers. But she came. And that mattered. She brought a store-bought salad that was still half frozen. I didn't comment. I didn't need to. The old me would have smiled, said thank you, pretended it was perfect. This version of me just placed it on the table and moved on. Progress isn't loud. Over dinner, Cheryl was quiet, observant. She listened as I told stories, as I laughed, as others asked for my opinion on city council changes. There was a flicker in her eyes, like she was meeting me for the first time, not as her mother, as a person. After dessert, she stayed behind to help clean up. That alone was historic. As we washed dishes together, her awkwardly scrubbing a pan, me wiping it dry, she finally spoke. "You really changed," she said. I shook my head. Number I just stopped hiding. She looked at me, eyes glassy. "I'm sorry, Mom. For a lot." I didn't jump to forgive. I let the silence sit between us like an old friend we both needed to acknowledge. Then I said, "You don't have to fix everything. You just have to show up, even when it's uncomfortable." She nodded. "I will." And for once, I believed her. Not because of the words, but because of the way she said them. Small, honest, like someone finally understanding the cost of being absent. Weeks passed. Things weren't perfect. Cheryl didn't turn into a saint. She still forgot to return my Pyrex, still texted more than she called. But she showed up, more than she used to. And I stopped keeping score. I kept going to the leadership meetings, kept mentoring a young widow named Anne, who reminded me a lot of myself at 40, kept walking every morning. Yes, even with the vinegar, because I liked how it made me feel. Alive, in control, stubbornly myself. One afternoon, Cheryl and I sat on the porch. No agenda, just two women drinking tea and watching the mailman chase a runaway dog. We laughed. Real, unfiltered, deep-belly laughter. The kind that cracks something open. She reached over, squeezed my hand, and said, "You're kind of amazing, you know." I smirked. "Took you long enough." And in that moment, the past didn't disappear, but it softened, because sometimes the apology comes in words, sometimes in time, and sometimes in the quiet presence of someone who finally gets it. I wasn't waiting anymore. I was living. I had survived collapse, dismissal, silence, and I came out brighter. The habit didn't kill me. The silence almost did. But not anymore. The end and the beginning of everything that matters.